Yeah, I know we're pretty late to this topic. Uh, Life gets in the way and such, but things haven't really died down. Like I have a collection of things that we're gonna go over that I'm sure other YouTubers and such have gone over with the quote unquote drama. There is still like it's still relevant in my opinion because I was gonna title the video something along the lines of like Melonie Mac and the Grifter problem because I
Oh,
think
okay.
it extends beyond her, even though that's who we're focusing on today.
Oh
Because
yeah,
there
yeah,
is a
definitely.
what I would call a grifter slash infiltrator problem with quote unquote our side of the culture war or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it's not even just like Grifter either. Like, because this isn't just like video games or entertainment media. This is this extends to stuff like even politics. Like, you
Yeah,
know, a lot of people have certainly had a lot to say about especially ever since our god emperor has finally been inaugurated and has taken some of the actions that he has. Just because someone says they're a Republican, or just because someone is a Republican doesn't necessarily mean they're like a born again. They're like a hardcore Christian or something like that.
yeah.
You
In
know,
other words, there's a lot of rhinos in the Republican Party,
yeah,
and I would call what we're about to go over tonight an extension of that. So the thing is, a lot of people they call Melanie Mac a grifter, and that's not untrue. But
yeah.
I think it goes further than that. I think it goes further than that. I think she's just an infiltrator because it wasn't that long ago she was on the other side of the culture war, and here she is 7 years ago working for Jeff Keighley.
About 7 years ago, about when the Switch was brand new.
Yeah, a lot less tattoos, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Definitely not going for the golf, the
Yeah,
golf emo, whatever chemical romance. What was that? Like one tweet, like you're this isn't like my chemical romance anymore or whatever.
yeah, you're not in high school anymore. It's not 2006. As a little preview there, she pretty clean. I mean, she has tattoos, but no chokers, nothing, no hot topic uh looking wear. Here's this is the one that popped off.
Yeah, this is the one that went viral, and
Yeah, and as you can see, look, we got we got the pendant there. One, two, three, four, at least four chokers that I can
yeah,
see.
and
A lot more
that's
tats.
on her arm, for days and nights
Yeah,
and everything else in between.
she didn't have all
Um,
this on when she was a lefty, but now that she's supposedly a super duper God fearing Christian, she has more
yeah,
tattoos. She has the goth girl, e-girl look.
and
Yeah.
I mean, what I'll comment with is, I grew up in a, I had a Christian upbringing. And various people. There's times where I like the church I grew up in. They had like a recovery sort of thing program that they ran, and it's not uncommon that a lot of these people actually who go through, and if they stick to it, stick to landing on the recovery part. I mean, unfortunately, permanent tattoos are what they are,
Well,
and
you
obviously,
can get them removed. There's like a laser removal thing, but it's very lengthy and like costly process. So,
yeah, and based on what I've heard about the cost of like some of these recovery programs, I think you know that might be like a lot more money than what it's worth, especially with when how far your dollar goes is not what it used to be like in the 50s or something. Um, but I grew up with that, and it's if someone comes back, or discovers Christ or something, it's not really that uncommon, for them to still have some of that stuff back when they were
yeah.
living in sin.
And since you mentioned that, that's a good segue into this, which is our first lie of the day. Religious views in 2016. She was definitely not a Christian in 2016.
Yeah,
I can almost assure you.
yeah, not in the sense of like definitely being committed. Um, from what I understand, I don't know all the beliefs of Catholics, But I have a feeling that the most of Christianity, like as far as like her conversion is, it's probably one of those things where her parents baptized, but this wasn't a thing in my tradition. They don't believe in infant baptism, but in uh Catholic church, that's like almost like it's almost like the norm if their parents are Catholic. Like that's like a tradition that you're kind of just baptized into it, and if it sticks, you go to confirmation afterwards. It's not even just like Catholic. I know that's like Lutherans and other denominations
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, it's a lot, I would say. Yeah. So we have this whole new, and I guess this her YouTube page would serve as like a pretty good timeline. I mean, you could see. Let's go back to the top. You could see she's like gone all in on the oh look at me, I'm a hardcore Christian. I mean, like when she makes videos like this, she's not wrong. Like the Castlevania one here.
Yeah, the one adapting Rondo of Blood, which
Yeah,
is not even just that. It's also like like super like woke. And the first like one
yeah,
adapting Castlevania Free was already pretty woke, and even that aside, I watched only the first two seasons, and I was like, they already killed Dracula off, and I don't know,
yeah,
maybe by season four, maybe they adapt Curse of Darkness on PS2 because they made a big deal about Hector and Isaac, and I'm like thinking, okay, it's kind of neat that they're bringing these characters here because I guess they were involved in the story, but anyways, that's
yeah,
that's a whole other rant video that I'm not sure I really feel like doing.
yeah. And like if we, God damn it, if we
Yeah,
go back to this video here, I know I have it muted, but you just look up Melanie Mac Jeff Keighley and it's the first thing that comes up.
yeah.
Um, this video is basically like they're wrapping up their E3 coverage of 2017, and Jeff is like, so what's your favorite part? What was your favorite part of doing all this? What do you think of this experience? And she's like, oh, it's great, it's good, I liked it. It's like, do you have any favorite games? Like, yeah, it was fun. Like she has, if you watch this video, she has like nothing of substance to say.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and like all of a sudden, like, oh, she cares about all this stuff. She cares about freaking Captain America. She cares about Fantastic Four. She cares about Castlevania.
Like the typical like culture war, I'm
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff in media I'm trying to protest against in quotes. And
and I
go
would
ahead.
say like if you are like if you truly do care about this stuff, like yeah, it is a good thing to get into the culture because you can't be like the Matt Walsh type where you're just like, oh, cartoons are evil. Anyways,
Or
like
or like video games are just for grown man children, you know.
yeah, because if you ignore the culture war, you definitely won't win it because you're not in it. You're not criticizing what it is about the culture or the art or the products that we're getting. That's the issue. You're just blanket rejecting something, and then you're not even dealing with it. You're just ignoring it. You're like, oh, I don't care about games or anime or movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
And
no shit, you're losing.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you have to be making YouTube videos, expressing your outrage all the time. I mean, it could be
Yeah,
something as simple as, I'm not going to buy Sector and Cyrax and MK1 or
yeah.
MK12 because
Yeah,
I don't
you
like
don't
that
need to
they're
be doing this. If you genuinely care about all of this, then yeah, go ahead. But it's obvious this is just like to keep up appearances. I notice all these videos are like around the 10-minute mark too. This is just like for
yeah.
YouTube money and whatnot, just getting that average
I
10 minutes.
mean, I saw the second, yeah, some of them were like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course, the only one that's longer is like the stuff where she would bring up Christianity. So like, is are we healing from the Alphabet Mafia? The Blair White, who isn't that a tranny or something?
yeah,
That
yeah,
designed Jesus.
he is. I guess I don't know all the details, but I guess I guess he wants to be close to his family or whatever.
Yeah,
Who's like super conservative. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know much about him.
So yeah.
Whatever.
So I mean, as you can see, there's not a red line on these videos. So obviously, I haven't watched them, but I'm assuming I would probably agree with what she says about Castlevania. I'd probably agree about what she says about this female pastor lecturing Trump. I'll
Yeah,
probably agree with a lot of it.
but
And the one part where we disagree is I showed off a little bit of this earlier is this quote unquote Goonergate thing,
yeah,
which
and
I'm pretty sure she coined that term.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not just, oh, we disagree on this one thing, therefore she's no good.
What I want to say is, yeah, she said some of this stuff, but you have to wonder how much of it is actually legitimate.
Yeah,
I mean, because I mean, the thing is, like, from what you told me, like, this is like way discussions, like way before this video.
yeah,
She I think she like did this whole thing of like becoming a Christian and becoming like doing saying all the the right things according to some people online
yeah.
supposedly that after like she like her boyfriend or husband like dumped her or something.
Yeah, her ex-husband or fiance or whatever, apparently she caught him swinging the other way.
Oh, okay.
So people are like, "Oh, that's what sent her down this road." I'm sure she was obviously upset by that, but I don't think that's what quote unquote sent her down this road.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
usually what sends people down this road is either they get canceled or maybe they actually do have a legit experience you know with
yeah.
Christianity supposedly, and I'm
If
assuming
you
it's
yeah,
you know
like if you go back to that Jeff Keighley video where she has like nothing of substance to say, it's obvious like whatever she was doing wasn't getting traction. I don't know if I have any of them saved here. I was kind of crunching to like get all the screenshots from our chats.
you
Um,
can always put it in post, I guess.
yeah, and I don't know if I saved everything, but I mean, there's plenty that has um, went around Twitter already of like all her older tweets where she used, "Oh, we need to make Chris Red feel gay," and like those kind of
Oh yeah, I
tweets.
remember you shared me with me that one. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure like because of this. I mean, we were about to go into it. I'm aware of this Gunnar Gate um, fiasco, but yeah, that's kind of that. This isn't the first time that she's like kind of said something where it's like, you know, I suppose I support everything that the that people have been upset about all these years because see the thing is the whole this isn't just like recent 2024 era stuff.
yeah.
The issues that we're talking about like granted they go before gaming, like a lot of it is like rooted in stuff from like I mean depending on how far back you want to go, like I mean some of it's rooted into like stuff like ideologies that started spreading like in the 1800s, late 1800s, like early 1900s, if you want to like trace it like way, if you want to be like go full History Channel, not like that on a History Channel on TV, but like history like YouTube channel.
So
Yeah.
with this picture I have pulled up, this is when I mean maybe she's let something slip before this, but this is when I first noticed like Melonie kind of going back on points she's made. Like prior to this, she's defended games like Stellar Blade, which are like way more risque
Oh
than
yeah.
the game that like where her take went viral for it, which was the first Descendant. That game is nowhere near as risque as Stellar Blade. But
Yeah, yeah,
this
you
was
would know.
yeah, and this this set of tweets here, this was before she got pissed off about First Descendant. This was back when I think the Tomb Raider remastered collection was already out for a little bit, and there was an issue, and then they patched some things, and they some stuff was censored, and they actually listened to feedback and uncensored it, but not everything was uncensored. So we ever talking about this yeah, the one of the jackets that Lara Croft wears, um and there's like a nude poster, so like a nudie poster somewhere
Hmm.
in the game. And this is where people were first like, wait a minute, this isn't what we were getting behind here. And she
Yeah,
says,
yeah,
don't care who gets mad, the jacket needed to be censored. And the whole I mean not the whole thing, but a huge part of our kind of side of the culture war was censorship is bad, you shouldn't censor things. And for years 2014 was the big point, the big point where like people were made aware of it. But for
yeah,
years
yeah.
um it's this left-leaning people, leftists, who are in these American studios or in localization houses or
or
in
just
public.
gaming gaming
Yeah,
journalism like
gaming
Rockstar
journalists,
Shotgun and stuff.
publishers, the people freaking running Nintendo of America, and all these American branches, and they were always more than happy to censor things, if not straight up rewrite things and change the context of games and stuff.
Yeah,
And this is, as more and more people became aware of it, because of Gamergate popping off, people were like, well, wait a minute, this isn't right. One, if you're changing, whether it be an old game being remastered or a Japanese game being localized, why are you changing this? You're changing someone else's art, you're changing someone else's story, what they wrote, and then on top of that, you're censoring it too. Like, why are you doing that? There's no need for that. We have a
yeah.
whole rating system. We have the ESRB. You know, there's parental controls in consoles now. It's not like the Sega Genesis where little Timmy can pop in.
Mortal Kombat and put in the
Yeah,
code, and suddenly he gets the not uncensored fatalities because you could people probably don't know this, but you could still do fatalities in the Genesis version if you didn't put in that code. But it's always like a
yeah,
really lame version. And Sub-Zero's is like the funniest. It's just like he just does a uppercut that sends a guy like up really high and then they just fall to the ground. But I do want to say about ESRB. I mean, I'm aware that like different countries they have their own rating systems like Zero and
yeah.
Peggy. But yeah, so this is First Descendant here we got.
Oh yeah.
Um,
So this is. So I found this in our chat log. I clicked the link and apparently the original tweet got deleted. I don't know why. Like,
oh, well, at least we got like
yeah,
at
because this
least we
guy.
got like a preview that kind of shows what it was about.
Yeah, because this guy, Pirate Nation, he wasn't exactly on Melanie's side either, and a lot of people came to his defense. So I don't know why he deleted the tweet. But this, oh god, and I left a little the little URL preview.
It
So I'll read the
happens. It
picture.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, it happens. But we get the gist. I mean, because you can see
yeah.
the
So this
character.
this is what Melanie Max saw, and she was like, "Okay, this is a porn game," and this
And
is like right
and I'm
after defending Stellar Blade.
I'm sitting here going like, my Serenade just walks in and is like, hold my fan.
Since this popped off, Melanie, a lot of people who used to follow Melanie and defend her and stuff. Because before this, people did call her a grifter, and even myself, I didn't see it. But with this popping off, a lot of people argued with her, and she argued back. And I don't have all of those, but I have this one where she compares us to the LGBTQ and the Troons, uh, because apparently we commit the exact same sins, and we're an abomination to God all the same.
Well, okay. So here's what I'm gonna have to. She's not the first one to make this observation like this. Um, I will say that like in the church culture I grew up in, anytime they would talk about guys who or even women, usually it's guys because obviously it's a more of a guy issue.
Yeah.
Um,
And
they're struggling.
this other tweet I brought up here, this is a much more recent one, February 12th, where she's still harping on this stuff, where
Yeah.
premarital sex apparently leads to, the current situation we have in schools.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of people go and point back to like the sexual revolution and like the pill and like the birth control pill as being like and I'm not saying that those stuff did not have like some impact in some way.
Yeah.
As far as like this particular picture goes, but going back to like the previous like the previous image, you don't have to like necessarily go back because I mean people can pause and
Yeah.
see what I'm talking about, I guess. But
I'll go back to
when they
this.
would talk about like Rule 34, people looking at that stuff online, um, they would go and say like, what happens is it starts off like soft, but then you need more to get you off, and eventually it leads to either this or someone's becoming straight up uh, a pedophile. And obviously, whenever these pastors are talking about this, you gotta remember these are like old. Well, most of them are like old, like boomers, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe even like before boomers, depending on how old they are and if they're still active. Um, who their understanding is just they don't know if they know about anime, they probably only know like the negative stuff because
Yeah, like
they'll
that wash.
well, it's because to them it's like the negative, sticks out is a bigger sticks out much more strongly in their mind,
Yeah.
and that whole like like, oh, it starts off as this and then it's a slippery slope that turns into this. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not true, but it's not. How do I put
I
this?
mean, it's true. It's kind of like anecdotal evidence. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's like one person dies from a heroin overdose, and another person has the will to kick it. After doing it a little bit. It's like anything in life. You can get addicted. You can overdo it. You can start with weed, and then you could graduate to heroin or whatever the hardest drug there is out there is. And you
fentanyl
can
or whatever.
yeah, and you can overdose and die. Or some people, they just weed is good enough for them, and they just smoke that their whole life, and they don't ever actually get addicted to anything. They just do it when they need to. I mean, hell, we have medical marijuana now for the things that can actually help. I doubt we're ever gonna have medical heroin because I don't really see how that helps anything. But
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, some people they don't feel the need to keep going and chasing the dragon, as they say, and find more and more extremes. Some people just have really addictive personalities, like
yeah,
like when you see like a really fat person who like needs to like stress eat or whatever they call it, like
yeah. Or they participate in mukbang stuff.
it's like the stereotypical thing you might see in a movie, like, of a fat person gorging themselves and crying at the same time, or like hell, there's probably tons of YouTube videos where people do that for views. Yeah, and obviously I'm not trying to say that like stress eating or weed is the exact same thing as this or heroin,
Yeah,
but like that's the other thing is they're not the same, and she's kind of saying that like, oh, anything that's remotely addictive is dangerous to people, and we got to get all this shit out of video games, and we got to sterilize everything, and nobody can be exposed to this ever, which to me, that's like the equal opposite response to something like that. It's like, oh, so humans can't be trusted with anything ever.
yeah.
That
It's a very like it's kind of like a parent being like, oh well, if if my kid is like addicted to internet, I'm gonna turn the internet off for everyone, as opposed to like, and granted, again,
yeah,
some of these parents,
it's
most
it
parents are not gonna know,
Yeah,
but
but yeah, going back to this, like Melanie, like she's as a supposedly right wing, extremist, she's basically making the gun argument. She's saying, "Oh, there was a shooting at my school, so we got to get rid of guns in the entire country." Like that's what she's saying with this.
I don't know how much you want to go into like stuff as far as like waifus and crushes, you know, for both of us, or
Yeah, I mean, we could go surface level with it because I know that is that's a thing people will bring up is like, oh, this guy, he's he has his body pillows and he doesn't go outside and whatever. And again, that's we're comparing it to drugs again because this is things can be addictive, things can hook you, things can pull you in, and especially I don't assume to know what they would call hikikomori. I don't assume to know what everyone's life those people's lives are like to generalize, but there's usually something that happens that pushes someone away from society or from going out, trying to meet people. Sometimes people just don't have an avenue. Like if you're someone who lives in super duper rural area where your town population is like 100, like you're not gonna. It might be cheaper to you know import some dakis, instead of I can't generalize for like hikikomoris or like whatever kind of person, shut-ins, or even not even going that far. But like we said, things can pull you in, things can be addicting, but also, these things are escapism for a lot of people, and a lot of people have just not had a good run of things in life. A lot of people have not had a good hand dealt to them. You know,
yeah,
like not to. I know people laugh like, oh, like whenever people bring up, oh, there's children starving in Africa. You're a starving kid in Africa who has like 0.5 meals a day and like water every other day.
If even that.
If even that, like, and then like somebody just like airdropped a body pillow on you. Like, would you really care if that person got addicted to, where they have like nothing else in their life? Not that that's something that would probably like realistically happen, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, not everyone leads, the kind of life that Melonie is like projecting here, that she wants people to believe she leads. Super duper right wing, God fearing, doesn't commit any sin that the Bible would where like some super old school preacher would ridicule her for or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not even necessary to say like some of the stuff in that regard isn't even bad. Like, but just because that might be good for someone else, or even a big giant group of people, doesn't mean it's going to be good for everyone, or good or even desirable for everyone. I mean, just because what I mean, I can tell you right now from the church culture I grew up in, there's a lot of people who, I mean, they grew up in it, and I mean that church culture is dying out. I mean, a lot of it is mostly because people who grew up in it, they move on. They're not. I mean, a lot of it I would say is mostly maintained by the fact that the parent that in that culture is it's kind of encouraged. I don't want to say necessarily encourage, but it's kind of promoted that the parents kind of hold the fact that they provide people a roof, and if you try to exit the proverbial umbrella, they'll
Yeah.
they'll threaten you with like kicking you out, or in some extreme cases, again, some of it's kind of anecdotal evidence as well as well, with some of these stories that I've read online,
Yeah.
where some of these kids who are like apparently super rebellious, and they're in the parents are 40s word whatever, um
Yeah,
they
it's
get
usually
sent
like
they get
a response or a reaction to like,
well no
you know.
they'll like send them to like recovery, not
Oh,
recovery, not like not like work camps, like
okay.
um
No accountability buddies.
that's kind of what the work camp is kind of is,
Okay.
but like in a more like real way, um oh, if you're addicted to porn or something, or if you catch your teenage boy, send him to a work camp. He'll be working so hard he won't feel like touching himself, or that's kind of what I think is the logic.
Yeah.
um Even though you have to be working a lot, you have to be working like crazy if you're like at 120% for that to happen, in my opinion. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
like the other thing is to blame like teachers pushing true and stuff in schools like on like waifu games or porn not being illegal. Like that's such a reach. Like as we alluded to, as we touched on briefly earlier, like there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on sociopolitically
Yeah.
that's led to all this. So it's not that like porn has nothing at all to do with it. Sure, it might be used and leveraged in certain ways to get people to do things, but that's a result of evil people high in power playing the devil, using something to lure someone in, tricking them, and getting them to go a certain way. That's it's not the drug that does the brainwashing. There's usually someone that it's usually how you're introduced to it, or someone introduces it to you, and they're like, well, if you're into this, you might want to try this, or
Or even like someone who's just like alone by themselves, like curious, they're discovering Google, and they're like, oh, if I type certain things into Google, and then you
yeah,
type in
like you don't even have to be a porn watcher. You could just be browsing Reddit and find yourself in a subreddit full of
oh yeah,
they're
yeah,
super
nowadays,
duper
yeah.
leftists. And yeah, it doesn't have to be anything remotely NSFW. You could just be in a subreddit where people are like constantly parroting all this stuff in their echo chamber, and then someone impressionable starts to believe it, and then they start parroting that stuff. Like this, there's many forums. I was gonna say, well, does that mean we have to ban Reddit? And I'd be like, well, that wouldn't be so bad, but
Well,
but yeah,
yeah,
but
that
my
wouldn't
point
be a
is
good
like
idea because
I wouldn't ban anything.
yeah,
Like
because as unfortunate it is to say, there's a lot. I mean, we just mentioned the negatives. There's some positives to Reddit, which is there's a lot of information about a lot of stuff there that you can look up. It's just a matter of you might have to like really be fighting with the search engine and whatever SEO that the topic, the original posters or however the algorithms like work out,
Yeah,
that you
especially
just
with
have to
AI
like
now.
fight with that, yeah, and that too.
As again we touched on earlier, I don't think Melonie actually believes any of this. I think, she was a grifter, whether it was Jeff Keighley or whoever sent her. Maybe she was getting USAID money. I don't know.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's relevant now.
yeah, because she pissed off like a huge, I would say more than half of her audience with the Goonergate stuff. And if you were to just say she is just a grifter, there's no money in pissing off more than half of your audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
She's
means one of two things, or both, that she was getting USAID money to do all this, or two, her infiltration and subversion is more important than the money because she's otherwise taken care of. I mean, freaking, I heard she's getting paid by the quartering as well because she's a part of his podcast or whatever.
oh really?
Yeah, that's what they said on Kino Casino. I don't know. I haven't cared to look into that, but
No.
but in some of these, like you'll see the quartering has like a hard on for defending her. Like this guy Smash GT, of people who get called grifters on Twitter, Smash GT was like the first one to hit back against Melonie and be like, "All right, I don't think you're one of us actually."
I feel like
And
I maybe watched a video by him, or maybe it was name dropped in a video I watched about this, like 2 weeks ago.
yeah, so the quartering has been like sweeping for Melonie hardcore on Twitter
Yeah,
anytime like anyone remotely
it,
big comes at her.
yeah, and
And
it's
of course,
also Razor Fist as well, for what it's
yeah,
worth.
who we'll get into later. But my main point with what I was saying is, it kind of, if you know what the horseshoe theory is, it kind of comes back to where, as we said, so long the left has been trying to subvert and infiltrate and most of all censor our media. And
Yeah,
within gamers, the left has been pretty successful at that. And
unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately, despite all the resistance, I mean, because there's a lot of resistance to it, but at the end of the day, normies will buy anything, and that kind of cancels out whatever rage we have on the internet or whatever. And when you
That
go
that and
from
also that and also ESG like funding some of the blowback that they would have
yeah, yeah,
normally
ESG
received.
funding from BlackRock and China and who knows what else.
Yeah,
And according to horseshoe theory, the extreme left really isn't all that different from the extreme right. So this is where she just kind of gently slides over and acts like no one's gonna notice. Where this is just another form of that leftist censorship.
yeah.
This is the right wing way to be like, all right, we got to cover up the girls in the games. We gotta get all this quote unquote degeneracy out of the games.
I mean, really, it's a form of Puritanism. Like even when I was in the church I grew up in, like women, their like skirt length was like something they watched over. Like they can't go below; they have to go below the knees. It's basically the same sort of stuff that we're seeing now. I would tell Kung Fu Man from Mugen here that it is not gay to enjoy looking at this, even though it's just a creative character from First
First
Descendant, right?
Ascendant, yeah. So we come to our first of many grifters who are simping for Melanie Mac for whatever reason. Who's like 40 years old and single and divorced or whatever.
Yeah, drying up.
Of all the people to no eggs in the carton. So of all the people to trash your reputation for, I don't know why. I don't know what Melanie has on them to be doing this, but here we have
Or
John
what they have on
Delarose.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have John Delarose who's gone full on board with the Christian thing, and apparently, like, I don't even know where this would fall in the horseshoe. Apparently, First Ascendant is gay. Apparently, this is gay. A woman being attractive, that is gay. That's something Nick Fuentes would say, but
Yeah, the totally not an FBI plant, Nick Fuentes,
yeah,
and also who's also like a cat boy
yeah.
and like other things.
And speaking of being other things, I didn't want to like go in detail and save all these pictures because it's probably not even safe for for YouTube. But
Well,
they
I mean, just
yeah,
blur it
but
out, whatever.
yeah, but they caught John Delarose back in 2019. Caught him in 4K being a gay furry. So
Oh wow.
I guess if anyone would know what's gay, it would be him. But
So I guess he'd have no problem with being butt buddies with Sonic Fox.
yeah. So his Christian stick doesn't really work for. I mean, he still has followers and fans. I don't know. Should have had this picture up when I was talking about the horseshoe theory because
Well, yeah, I mean, we brought up Gamergate, and Anita. I mean, while she wasn't like necessarily like the thing that she wasn't necessarily like the spark, the lady that sparked it. There's a whole conspiracy video that's been mirrored a
yeah,
thousand times about it. Um,
there's a lot that was going on that kind of boiled up to a point,
yeah,
which exploded into what we know as Gamergate.
yeah, the Gamergate and everything after. Some people even think Gamergate led to Trump. So I guess in a way,
Guess it was a
gamers
good thing.
save the universe.
Yeah,
Save IRL. But yeah, I mean, it's not. There's not really that much of a difference because, like, well, I mean, and it's in a way like when you think about like extreme, like because I don't want to necessarily use the word extremism because that can mean different things. Because like whenever you think of like extreme, people think like they'll think of something like Nazism. I mean, Christianity is just it's not about being cool. It's not about being based and red pilled, which is really only an online thing. All these like, well, I'm feeling, it's all doomed. I'm black pilled, and oh, I'm, everything's all sunshine and rainbows. Like I'm white pilled now. Like that's mostly like a bunch of memes that started. I don't know if they
yeah.
started
Like
it.
I think I noticed like on poll, 4chan poll, like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, you gotta go be based in red pilled way, brother, and follow Christ and stuff." And that kind of just stayed there for a while, and then eventually I started seeing that like flow over onto Twitter with like a lot of the big right wing accounts who like
Yeah,
they definitely wouldn't be online that much to like know all these terms and stuff. They just kind of went with it. They'd even name themselves like the based uh right winger or the based this such and such or whatever,
yeah,
and
I
they'd be
mean,
like, oh, based on red pilled Christian guy,
yeah.
and they're just like talking like regular, the same points they've always been talking about, the same right wing Christian points they've always been talking about. But we
I
have Razor Fist here, who I don't know when he made his conversion or whatever, because I'm pretty sure this guy used to be like a hardcore atheist in the past. He was your typical edgy internet guy.
yeah.
He just
Now,
happened to be kind of right leaning, which pissed off a lot of people who probably would have been in his audience, like Redditors and such.
yeah, I mean, I remember when he was like what was it, the Rageaholic?
Yeah,
So yeah, I always associated, I had the same association as you did, where he's like, oh, he's like, I mean, the dude's like swearing up a storm, and even in that one side scrollers
yeah,
blow up
yeah.
recently,
I'd
where
say
he
he's
was,
more of a rageaholic than ever now.
yeah, in a maybe not in the way he wants, he intended to be. Even though he's now supposedly a Christian, he's still like things of stuff that I know there's there's one verse in the Bible that says let no corrupt speech just is like paraphrasing proceed from your mouth basically,
Yeah,
which gets interpreted to be like don't you know don't say fuck ass and everything else.
yeah, and like we could probably link that side scrollers or no, there's a YouTuber named Fratanga. He did a really good cut up of like Rageaholic of Razor's freak out.
I might
And
have seen his video maybe because that sounds familiar.
yeah, I think I sent you like a clip of it on Twitter, just a small piece of it.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's basically, and Razor's never really been any different in this regard, in that when people call him out and they actually have an argument against him, he won't actually like give a good faith argument. He'll just insult them, be
Oh yeah.
hyperbolic, and like especially in that side scroller segment, like he didn't actually respond to anyone's argument at all. Like there was a constant flood of super chats being like, "All right, Razor, come on, like just
Yeah.
just level with me here." And he's like, "No, fuck you."
Yeah, there's the same like critical. It's the same. It's like the same tactic, same critical theory tactic from the Frankfurt School.
Yeah.
Um,
And
which
what a lot of people in that chat said is he's a glass cannon. He can dish it, but he can't take it.
yeah, and yeah, I
And
remember this. Yeah, he's like your dog pile's a work tactic, and it's like I'm like thinking, well,
it's like
it's not like
one doesn't address the argument being presented in Mr. Based Player's tweet here.
yeah,
And Two, it's not a like one person responding to you is not a dog pile. Like if other people retweet his tweet, that doesn't constitute a dog pile. That just means more people agree with him.
Wait, is it a dog pile if I go and piss in public and people are like, like everyone like starts like making, start rightfully shaming me? I mean,
Yeah.
no, that's just
Someone calls the cops on you. Like
yeah. They
oh
they
the
call
dog pile. Oh,
yeah, yeah. It's like there's some things you just don't do.
I'm
I,
sorry, I thought this was a free country.
and speaking of taking a piss,
Yeah. So here we have another example of what I just talked about. So Smash JT posts a clip of Melanie Mac defending Stellar Blade, far more risque. Even from this blurry image, you could see this is far more risque than the first
yeah. It's not. I
Ascendant
mean, it's
image
not
that
even
she
like
put
her
out.
like or like what the hard mode costume
Yeah.
where I'm
Yeah,
like
it's not
thinking
even that bad.
you just like look at it like
Yeah, so
oh,
like this is yeah, she's defending it here, and this was not that long ago. Smash is like, please, Melanie, listen to yourself. And this guy again, not really addressing anything, calls him a porta potty mouth, and he says that Melanie doesn't care because her favorite game is Tomb Raider, even though that's kind of more of a own, that's more of a cell phone for both of them
yeah.
because it just kind of brings up her hypocrisy.
Just seeing a
Uh,
lot like Pearl clutching we went through over heavy metal and D&D back in the day. Just
which
because
Razor Fist himself did videos on. I don't know if I have that picture here, but
yeah.
he talked about the this what they call the Satanic Panic,
Oh
and
yeah.
here we have
Yep.
Razor saying that the Satanic Panic never happened, apparently, even though like there are plenty of people who are old enough to have lived through it.
Well, yeah, he's basically acting like it was like a January 6th, like it was a whole, like it was like a false flag to like try to
Yeah,
arrest people or something.
like
Um,
we literally had Tipper Gore like trying to get like metal music banned. Like this shit happened. You talked about it, Razor. Like, what are you doing?
yeah, and it kind of goes back like people think about like they think about this stuff going back like as far as video game because this is mostly video games we're talking about. They think about like as far as like figures like as far as them like making an outcry about things. They think about like Quincy like Anita Sarkeesian as like the first one I think nowadays.
Yeah,
But back then there was also but before Anita there was Jack Thompson.
yeah,
Um was like critical of like Grand Theft Auto. He was like eventually I think he eventually got disbarred. Um yeah, that was like before Anita, and then there's obviously the stuff in the '90s where they
yeah. And
they
Fox
had like
News used to like be all over that shit, especially GTA. And
yeah,
like I was alive for that, so you can't tell me that didn't happen.
and I remember seeing like an old video clip. I think it was on GameSack where they were talking about like Mortal Kombat One and Night Trap of all games.
Yeah, yeah, that was the other thing. That's the whole reason. Like that in Mortal Kombat is the whole reason the ESRB got created.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, and yeah, I mean, part of the reason why Mortal Kombat is so so culturally well known that the people like associate think about it as it and Street Fighter as far as like it's like the two main like fighting franchises is Mortal Kombat had that kind of impact as well as Night Trap, but
yeah,
I can't believe I can't believe Night Trap of all games. Like
like I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
even back then that was kind of niche. They were just kind of they were just like, oh, here's the game we could use as an example. Like, oh, like it wasn't flying off the shelves. Like you needed a freaking Sega CD to like
Yeah,
this wasn't that long ago.
I
In
mean
the
we weren't
early
really
2000s, the rate was like
yeah
the
more
Fox
it's more the
News
two
rate was still
thousands
kind of
that we were alive for. Yeah,
yeah. We're doing this thing, and I would say Razor's probably like you know same age as Melanie, older than us, and he's
yeah. I
saying this
mean
stuff was a psyop that like didn't happen. Come on,
and
guy.
and it's like all and as this free red profile poster guy is saying he's doing all this
Forty-year-old,
just for the booty of a 40-year-old biker chick.
yeah, he dresses like it's high school, like if she's at Hot Topic,
Yeah,
even though her curtain's empty.
yeah, or or if she does end up reproducing, it's you have a higher chance of things possibly not going the way you expect.
Yeah,
I'll just say it. I'll just leave it at that. The whole thing boils down to censorship, really. That's really what this all boils down to. It's not a matter of like, oh, one side is censoring the other side. It's no, it's all censorship is bad, and it this goes to stuff that goes beyond video games. I mean, there's
Yeah,
governments and like they would censor people if not throw them in
yeah.
prison for some of the stuff or execute them for some of the stuff they say. I mean, we're talking about like Christianity. I mean,
If you go wide scale, like before Elon Musk had Twitter, like they had to censor everything. They had to remove stuff off Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all this stuff. The left had to censor so much stuff just for their points to quote unquote look good. And even then, a lot of us, were, we could see well enough to see that it doesn't look good. And that's what this comes back to. If I'm not saying this as a point to Christianity. I'm saying this more as a point to Melonie and her sad gaggle of goons here.
yeah.
Um, if you have to censor so much stuff for your ideology to prosper and to take off, maybe it's not that good of an ideology to begin with.